We hate to besmirch the paragon of good taste that brought us the cinematic classic, the Emoji Movie, but what on earth is Sony thinking? Hooking up with Marvel Studios and Disney was one of the best things they've done recently, and just like that, this once lucrative partnership is all over. That's right, the Marvel Cinematic Universe will have to go on without Spider-Man, and we have a feeling Sony will be left scrambling with a character they've already proven they're unsure what to do with. We'll talk about how the mutual deal went all wrong, and just what makes Sony so sure they can pull this off. Every superhero has to have a ridiculous and over-the-top origin story, and the movie rights to Spider-Man are comic book level convoluted. There was a time when Sony Pictures and Disney were working together to bring us the quality Spider-Man content that we oh so crave. Their deal allowed Peter Parker to swing into the MCU and made both Sony and Disney a whole lot of money. But just as Avengers Endgame became the highest-grossing film of all time, our sweet Peter Parker was ripped away from his home in the MCU. The current agreement between Disney and Sony ended with Spider-Man Far From Home, and both companies sat down to renegotiate their deal going forward. Allegedly, Disney offered a 50-50 co-financing agreement, but Sony turned that down immediately and countered with an offer of their own. Sources claim they proposed keeping the current agreement in which Marvel receives a mere 5% of the first dollar gross. Now it was time for Disney to say no way, and the two companies were forced to part ways when they couldn't come to an agreement. On the surface, maybe this doesn't look like a terrible idea for Sony. After all, thanks to the hard work and creativity of Marvel Studios, everybody loves Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Why shouldn't Sony have their character in their fictional universe and reap all the profits? Well, mostly because they've been kind of a mess when it comes to comic book movies. Back in 1998, Sony was offered the rights to some Marvel heroes that you might have heard about, like Iron Man, Thor, Black Panther, Ant-Man, and Spider-Man for the low price of $25 million. Sony flat out said nobody cares about any hero besides Spider-Man, and left the other characters behind, taking possession of the movie rights for Spider-Man for just $10 million. But to put into perspective what a shrewd business deal this was, Disney would go on to pay $4 billion for those characters in 2010 when it acquired Marvel Entertainment. But Sony's acquisition of Spider-Man came with a special stipulation, namely that they would have to keep making Spider-Man movies or the rights would revert back to Marvel. But rather than churn out yet another bad Spider-Man movie or lose the rights to the character, they worked out a deal with the devil. We mean Disney. So what makes Sony so sure they can get Spider-Man right this time? Although critics didn't love Venom, it made over $856 million at the box office and became the 7th highest grossing film of 2018. Then there's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which was a genuinely good movie. Yeah, that's right, we don't have anything sarcastic to say about that one. And let's not underestimate how successful Spider-Man Far From Home was. The Spider-Man franchise is definitely on a high note. And now that Disney's set it up for success, Sony is ready to take over. What it comes down to is that Sony thinks Disney is asking too much for their input, and they can handle subsequent Spider-Man projects on their own. But while Sony has definitely had some recent success, let's not forget about all the times they just couldn't get it together. Sony is not only trying to set up a good third installation in a Spider-Man trilogy, but they're trying to set up their own cinematic universe around Spider-Man. It's a huge goal, and while we know Marvel Studios makes it look easy, it's actually anything but. Sony simply doesn't have the track record necessary for us to feel confident in their ability to do justice to Tom Holland's Spider-Man, which has been so impeccably handled up until this point. Or maybe we're still traumatized what they did to our former favorite Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, in Spider-Man 3. To make the situation even crazier, director Jon Watts has said he would love to feature Kraven the Hunter in the third Spider-Man movie. But as much as we love Kraven, we have our reservations. As for the MCU, don't worry, it's not running out of characters anytime soon. Its fourth phase of films will introduce new comic book characters like the Eternals and martial arts master Shang-Chi. Oh, and they now have the rights to use characters like the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and Deadpool. In order to compete with the MCU, Sony is going to have to step up in a big way, and only time will tell if they'll be able to pull it off. So, do you think Sony made a massive mistake by shunning the MCU, or do you think they have what it takes to make more great superhero movies? Let us know what you think in the comment section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. And hey, thanks for watching.